Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this tomorrow on the undercard of Jonas vs. Price. Amateur standout Karis Artingstall will be making her ring return opposite the ring, Raven Chapman. 31 years old to Karis, who's 30. Karis is a southpaw, whereas Raven is an orthodox fighter in a fight that's difficult, tough to edge.
Because of the intangibles.
On one end, you have a fighter who's coming off a lopsided loss, but on the other end, you have a fighter who hasn't fought in a long while. And this ain't the kind of opponent you shake off ring rust with.
With Raven?
Raven Chapman sports a professional record of 9 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 10 professional bouts, just a smidge, just a hair more experienced in the paid ranks than Karis Artingstall.
She's got a few more fights than Karis Artingstall, few more rounds than Karis Artingstall, coming off that lopsided decision loss to Skye Nicholson.
Where Karis sports an unblemished record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, and 1 recorded knockout.
The issue,
Karis Artingstall hasn't fought in over a year. For whatever reason, the last time she saw action was in January of last year opposite the ring Leila Furtado, who acts as a common opponent between her and Raven Chapman.
Both won a points decision against Leila, and the both of them struggled with Leila.
How will they fare against each other? It's hard to say. It's hard to know. I suppose it helps Karis that she's the house fighter. She's the one that's signed to box her.
But as stated, it also helps Raven that she's seen action in the last 12 months where Karis Artingstall hasn't.
Raven was last in action in October of last year. There's not a year in between her last fight and her next fight.
Implementation.
Raven Chapman is a characteristically bouncy fighter, very bouncy, on her toes, in and out, jumping in and out of striking distance, throwing combinations while she does it, angling off
to the side to get off the jab.
Bring over the backhand, changing levels, all the while, fighting at a slight crouch, bending at the waist, bending at the knees. She's got some pop, she's got some power, though not more, I think, than Karis Artingstall. I think punch for punch, Karis Artingstall packs more single punching power than Raven Chapman does, so long as she can get the arm out to get full extension and really drive the punches, whereas Raven's best punches are bent arm punches, hooks, uppercuts, in the pocket, very short punches.
She's coming off a loss.
But you know that I really don't read too much into that, because the fight that she's about to have might be nothing like the fight that she just had with Skye Nicholson. Skye is an outboxer, an outside fighter, a mover, a jabber, whereas Karis, she may not have to chase Karis around the ring for 15, 20 minutes. Karis might bring the fight to her.
Karis has very similar physical dimensions to a Skye Nicholson, but not the temperance of a Skye Nicholson. She's more aggressive.
Doesn't mind mixing it up in the pocket, and neither does Raven Chapman. That's Raven's sweet spot. Mid-range to inside is where she does her best work. Something similar applies to Karis Artingstall, but like I said, Karis's best punches are her straight punches, so she needs a bit more room to work than Raven does.
Both can show a bit of spite, bit of spice and mean streak, but at the same time, both boxers can move and punch when they need to.
Who do I think is going to win? It's very hard to say, because my heart is with Raven Chapman, but my head is with Karis Artingstall.
Why?
Karis is the house fighter. She's the boxer fighter. So if the fight is close and competitive and the rounds are tight, who do you think is going to get all the consideration? The house fighter.
The question is, after over a year of inactivity, facing a better fighter than any fighter that she's fought in the paid ranks so far. Can she make it close? Can she make it competitive?
Or is she a little bit too cocky taking on a fight like this under these circumstances? A bit too overconfident?
Raven Chapman is really good, talented in her own right.
And you're thinking to yourself, she didn't look talented in her last fight, she didn't look good in her last fight, but need I remind you, Karis Artingstall is not Sky Nicholson. Karis ain't gonna spend 15-20 minutes at a fight playing keep away. She's got a mean streak. She likes to fight.
She's gonna step the Raven.
If what Raven struggled with in her last fight was a defensively minded fighter, a safety-first fighter, where Karis is a bit more ballsy.
Looking at a completely different fight between two very aggressive fighters.
I'm gonna go with a draw. I just don't know that Karis can get the job done, but I don't know that Raven can match her and keep her off.
Draws happen.
I remember when Ebony Jones was still over there on Sky with Boxer. She had a draw with some girl they conjured up for her. So it has happened, it can happen. I think it might tomorrow.
Going with a draw.
Over a year of inactivity fighting somebody like this, she must be very confident. Perhaps too confident.
What Raven struggled with was a fighter who didn't want to engage.
And that's not Karis. Karis tries for punches, takes chances. So I think this one will end in a draw.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, earlier today they held the kickoff press conference for the Canelo Alvarez versus William Skull fight that's supposed to crown Canelo a two-time undisputed champion, and yet there are some intriguing developments coming out of New York. Veteran boxing scribe Marcos Villegas said, "Dang, Turki shook his head no when someone from Canelo's team brought over his other belts during the face-off for everyone to get photos. He shook his head and was like, nah."
The last few days, there's been widespread speculation that it is now Turki's intention to do away with the 4 alphabet organizations, even though that's been the selling point for some of the fights that he's put on, like Fury versus Usyk, Better Be versus Bivol 1 and 2.
To a lesser extent, the fight that he's about to put on between Canelo and William Skull, because why else would you conjure up William Skull? Because he's got a belt.
He's not a big name. The only relevance of William Skull to the super middleweight division is that he has a belt.
But are you now trying to do away with those belts and the established order? Ade Oladipo and Ariel Helwani talked about this yesterday.
They are our belts, our rankings.
But I think
you're not the best.
History, and this is why I like the comparison that you make between ONE FC and Pride. The UFC, although Pride has been around a long time, UFC was still the first.
Yeah.
So UFC has that history. The TKO will never have the history of a WBA, which has been around since, I don't know, it's 104 years old.
Yeah.
It won't have that. So you'd always be able to sell the history. And look at the champions. The names that are attached to those belts being the biggest names of the sport. Like, you're saying, okay, you can be like Muhammad Ali. You can be like Floyd Mayweather. Even the kids coming through the Olympics that weren't even born when these guys were fighting will know of these guys. So you'll always be able to sell them that history. I think it's a great wake-up call for these governing bodies. I think the governing bodies have been trash for years. I think the way in which they rule in terms of someone just jumping up the ladder, so to speak, when that person's automatically fighting, all of a sudden they're number 2 ranked. Like, they weren't even in the rankings.
Right.
The sanctioning fees that fighters have to pay, the interim belts, the international belts.
This is what they're going to sell them
crap.
on. This is all crap, and you don't have to deal with any of it. And you're going to come train at the Performance Center, and we're going to get you the best promotion.
If you go to the Ring Magazine website right now, all 4 sanctioning bodies are listed as partners to Ring Magazine. Is all of that set to end? Is all of that set to change?
Is that why the World Boxing Council recently ordered Dmitry Bivol to fight David Benavidez, even though they know there's supposed to be a trilogy?
And they're not even next in the rotation. The IBF are next in the rotation. It's Michael Eifert that's next in line. But is that why they ordered that fight? As an act of defiance, to throw the monkey wrench in Turkey's plans.
Now that they are standing apart, at least some people think they are.
Some people think is that Turkey wants to do away with the established order. Would boxing be better off if he did?
My thoughts.
We criticize the alphabet organizations all the time for the chicanery, the shenanigans,
The favoritism.
the haphazard governance that we've seen over the years. But believe it or not, they still are an essential component to building a brand and building a star. a necessary process that a fighter must go through.
They are.
You can't look at these boxers through the lens where they're all like Canelo Alvarez and they're a brand that is already built. That Canelo is Canelo with or without a belt. For a lot of these guys, their only shot at the big time is to fight for an alphabet title, haphazard governance or not.
And the mandatory process.
Haphazard governance or not, for some fighters, that's their only way to get at a meaningful fight. The mandatory process. Would Kell Brook have fought Errol Spence right after losing to Gennady Golovkin if Errol wasn't his mandatory challenger?
No.
He had to fight him if he wanted to keep his belt and his champion status. That's what made that happen. Would Jeff Horn have fought Terence Crawford willingly so soon after beating Manny Pacquiao?
I don't think so.
The mandatory process is what made that happen. Terence Crawford was his mandatory challenger, and that's likely the only reason he took that fight.
Years ago, when Adonis Stevenson was still WBC light heavyweight champion, do you think he would have fought Vosdick willingly if not for the WBC ordering that fight?
Hell no. That guy was on Easy Street for years fighting cream puffs.
As much as we complain about the sanctioning bodies, there is still an essential function that they perform.
Not always, in some instances, but often enough that for some fighters, that's their only hope to land a big name fight.
You do away with them, and you do away with that process.
So I don't know that getting rid of them is the right thing to do, or the right move. It would be better if they got their act straight.
More governance, more consistency, less favoritism.
It would be better if they got their act straight. And what about Undisputed? Whether people like it or not, there is a lot of lineage and a lot of history attached to every single one of those alphabet titles, and that's what makes unifying all four of them special.
It's a monumental achievement because it's difficult to do.
So that if you eliminate that entire process and that entire narrative,
It's really just a bunch of guys fighting each other with no meaning.
wasn't that the appeal of Fury fighting Usyk? Wasn't that the appeal of Better Beef fighting Bivol? Take the belts out of it.
And it's not historical anymore.
And what's supposed to replace that? What's supposed to be the alternative?
Turkey did buy Ring Magazine, so I suppose they could fight for the Ring Magazine title.
What fighters decide to join him and Dana White's TKO boxing promotion, I suppose they could fight for that, but without them fighting for the other titles, boxing becomes splintered again.
Fragmented again.
And it's not an exact science, because if some big draw, some popular fighter is out there fighting for a WBC title, while Turkey's boys are fighting for the Ring Magazine,
If one or some other fighters out there are still fighting for alphabet titles,
it makes it harder to monopolize the sport if that is what Turkey's trying to do. Funnel all the top talent to him.
the rules don't change. We don't know who the top talent is unless everybody is fighting everybody.
We're entering the next phase of Turki Alalshikh's foray in the world of boxing, where seemingly he's choosing to stand apart from some entities, or maybe those entities are choosing to stand apart from him.
Same difference.
And that really is just more of the same. A splintered sport with a lot of fingers and a lot of pies.
You can't really control who the audience gravitate towards. Maybe you want to eliminate the alphabets, but some fighters might gravitate towards the alphabets, and some people might like watching those fighters.
Still so many questions that need answers.
I supported you before. I had you on the interview at Top Rank, dog. Don't do that. I've been supported you, dog. They didn't tell me nothing. I asked you that. I've been supporting you. A lot of people. I did a whole lot of. I did Nico. I did everybody. Come on, dog. Everybody supported you. You're doing the bullshit, like playing us, bro. As fans, that's dog. Niggas told you how that shit make people feel, bro. Calling people not. You just did it at the press conference the other day, bro. Come on, bro. Yeah, you know that, though. That's what I'm saying. You keep doing that. It's like, you gonna try to play me like I'm stupid now, bro? You all playing, yo, bro. Everybody done told you how offensive that is, and you have fans. Motherfuckers fuck with you. Black people sat up here and no, but how you gonna fuck with us and then call people monkeys and bananas and all that shit? Tio, you just did it at the press conference the other day. You just said it to Africa at the press conference the other day. You know what you said. Oh, where's the money? Here go a banana. Here go a banana. Here go a banana. What does that mean? You might as well, bro. I'm just telling you that shit is corny, bro. You need to stop that shit.
Don't try to outplay me.
I'm not trying to play you. I'm just talking to you, bro.
I called Javante. Hold on, no, I got you. I called Javante. I called Javante exactly what he is.
Another chapter in the same book where Teofimo Lopez can't really decide if he wants to be the bad guy, if he wants to be the heel or not, because as soon as he's pressed about it, he's got all these elaborate explanations.
When you said what you said, you knew exactly how people would receive it. You knew what reactions you were looking for, so why pretend?
It's almost like you're asking for permission to use that kind of rhetoric when the whole point is to be shocking, to be impulsive, to be controversial, and ruffle feathers.
So that when the feathers get ruffled and people ask you what you really mean, you play dumb.
That was Najee of Cigar Talk, pressing Teofimo about what he said, and I was not surprised to hear that while he may have been a supporter of Teofimo's before, he can't be a supporter of him now, not based on this kind of behavior. And let's get it straight, that this kind of behavior is not necessary towards selling a fight or even selling a character if you insist on playing one. That if you go in this direction, it's only because you're already comfortable with it.
It's a part of you, an extension of who you are, which is why you're comfortable.
You want to piss all these people off so that they root against you, to the point they start paying to see you lose, like people used to pay to see Floyd Mayweather lose. That's what you're trying to do, but you don't have the courage of your convictions to own it, that if you're gonna be that guy, you gotta be that guy all the time. You can't get in front of people, get pressed about it, and start playing dumb or apologizing, pretending that you meant something else.
You want to be the heel, don't you?
Isn't that the point? Stirring the pot, being the controversial one, for better or worse, in the name of press, as all publicity is good publicity. That's what some people think.
Seems to be his motto.
Even if that comes at the sacrifice of an entire section, an entire community within the boxing community, that's what you're doing. So just own it.
Assume your final form.
It's better this way. It's better for everybody, so that people know exactly who they're dealing with. Don't half-ass it.
Let it all hang out so people know exactly what you think and exactly how you feel about them.
He used that exact same rhetoric when Richardson Hitchens crashed the party, the kickoff press conference for Garcia versus Romero. He starts talking about bananas again.
Because people don't recognize pattern behavior, that every time you're talking about a black fighter, this is how you carry on.
If that is the role you wish to assume, own it and stop being such a chicken shit.
Aren't these the responses you were looking for? The reactions you wanted to ruffle feathers. You've done that.
He's been pressed about it more than once this past week. We talked about it in my previous video. But when you carry on like that in 2025, that's what's gonna happen.
You know that.
So that suddenly, California's Arnold Barboza becomes the hero in all of this. A guy who some people might be hoping can shut up this loudmouth.
Derail him.
Somebody you can root for. More than you can root for Teofimo, because he's seemingly drawn a line in the sand between himself and another group of people.
You never had to do that.
You chose to do that. Now you're gonna have to live with your decision.